Hey, how's it going everyone? This is Brandon Bias from teachercheck.com and welcome to another Photoshop tutorial. This week's tutorial is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. And if you guys end up enjoying this tutorial, I would really appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up, give it a like, or leave a comment, all that wonderful jazz, just to show us that you appreciate the work that goes into these tutorials and whatnot. And also don't forget to stick around until the end of the video to check out our favorite comments from last week's tutorial. So with all that said and done, what do you say we check out what it is we are going to be creating? So to be completely honest here, guys, I don't really know of a good way to explain what this is, other than that it's really colorful, it's kind of retro in style, at least in my opinion, and I don't know, it would just make a pretty fun little wallpaper for people. So let's just call this the retro spastic wallpaper. Alright, so as you can see, we just got some columns of different colors that are kind of fading to the distance and then zooming off to the side, and as well as a cool little set of, I don't know, like some diagonal lines of different lights and shades and whatnot. And we also have a cool little bit of a vignette with a splash of color in the side to kind of, you know, throw in a little bit more to the effect here. So this is a pretty simple tutorial, but I'm going to gear it a little bit more towards people that have some existing experience with Photoshop, specifically experience that includes making shapes, being able to move shapes around, to make copies, and maybe a little bit of like manipulating with the transform tool. All those skills will be pretty handy in making this thing a lot easier for yourselves, alright? So, with that all said and done, what do you say we get started here? So let's go to File and choose New, and go ahead and choose whatever resolution works for your wallpaper with a white background or whatever. And we'll just call this our Retro Spastic Tut. And we'll hit Control-0 to zoom into canvas size here. And first off, let's go ahead and unlock the background by double-clicking on it and name it as BG. And I'm going to use some guides to determine what the middle of the document is. So let's go to View, choose New Guide. We'll do 50% on the vertical, and then we'll go back and do 50% on the horizontal. Click OK. Very nice crosshair right here in the middle. So let's go ahead and apply a color overlay to the background here. And we'll simply make it like a lightish blue color. Maybe we'll make it a little bit more blue. And let's just, yeah, we'll just call that good there. Doesn't have to be anything specific. And so now let's go and grab our rectangle tool, and we'll have the fill be white for the time being here. And we're going to zoom in, and let's make a box right in the middle with the width and height of, let's do 160 pixels like so. Alrighty then. So now we're going to swap to our path selection tool here, and while holding down the Alt key, we'll move this on down to create a copy of it, and we'll hold Shift so it doesn't stray left or right. And we'll move this down about 170 pixels, so that'll create a 10 pixel gap between the top and the bottom. So we'll just go ahead and do this one more time, make a copy of it downwards 170 pixels, nice 10 pixel gap, and then we'll just take both of these, hold Alt, bring these on up. This time let's go ahead and just make it flush, and then use Shift plus up to do 10 pixels like that. Nice and simple. Alright, so let's go ahead and make a selection for all of these, and we'll go ahead and make a copy of them off to the left hand side here, making sure we have a nice 10 pixel gap. And then we'll go ahead and bring up the transform tool with Control or Command T. And the first thing we'll do is kind of trim these up a little bit. We'll do a width of 100 pixels, like so. And then let's hover over one of the corners. Let's go ahead and do the top left-hand corner. And we'll hold down the Control, Alt, and Shift keys all at the same time. That would be Command, Option, and Shift if you're on a Mac here. And simply click and drag this downwards until we have an angle of, let's do minus 75-ish, maybe minus 75.2, whatever. So somewhere in that general area, whatever you think looks pretty nice. And then we can hit the check mark to commit that transformation. Alright, so let's go ahead and swap over to our rectangle tool now so we can add in those long bars that we saw in the original here. And we'll simply zoom in on this, this middle area right here. And while holding down the Shift key, we'll create a new rectangle here. And we'll make sure that it has the appropriate height here. So let's go ahead and use our transform tool to kind of bring it out a little bit. And we'll do that. Awesome. And then of course, let's go ahead and stretch this on over to the left-hand side until it goes flush with the edge of our canvas. Nice and simple here. So let's go ahead and zoom in, swap back to our path selection tool. And once again, while holding down the Alt key, we can click and drag this upwards until it's flush with one of our other shapes here. We might need to trim this down in size so that it fits the size of that other shape there. And we'll go ahead and check mark that. Let's go ahead and make a new one. And we might also have to nudge that down. Looking like a pretty solid size. Awesome. So let's do the same thing on the other side. We'll select this center rectangle. We'll make a copy of it going downwards. And we'll trim this up a little bit like so. And then we'll do it one more time right down here. And everything is looking spick and span. So let's go ahead and select all of these rectangles and do Control-Alt-T. This allows us to transform this while making a copy of it at the same time. So what we can do is nudge all this on over until it's flush with the right-hand side, then right-click and choose Flip Horizontal, and then hit the check mark up top. All right. So now we've got our shape all nice and set up and looking pretty and whatnot. Now what we need to do is split all of these shapes into separate layers so that we can color them. So I'm going to start off with the left-hand side here, and I'm going to select this top shape like so. And then I can split this into a new layer by hitting Control-Shift-J. That would be Command-Shift-J if you're on a Mac, by the way. And so now this should be the left-hand side, the number 1 shape. So I'm just going to name this as L1 for left-hand side, number 1. All right? And then we can simply go back and do the same thing on rectangle 2 over here. So we'll do L2. And then just kind of go back and do the same thing for L3. And then L4. And then once again for L5. All right. So just for the sake of keeping everything all nice and organized, I will select L1 through L5 in the Layers panel. And then we can group this together by hitting Control or Command G. And we'll just name this as left. And then from there on, just basically do the same thing with the center, C1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then the same thing on the right side, R1, R2, R3, R4, and R5. All right, let's do it. All right, so we're looking pretty good so far. Let's go ahead and save our progress just in case Photoshop crashes. I've been having a lot of issues lately with Photoshop crashing for some reason, so it's nice to have a some progress saved while we're doing this here. So anyway, for the time being, I don't really need the guides in the middle of the document here. They're just going to be a little bit in the way, so I'm going to hide those guides by hitting Control semicolon or Command semicolon if you happen to be on a Mac there. And next up is to change the colors of all these individual shapes. So let's open up the left-hand side, and we'll choose L1. And then up to the top left-hand side here, we can go to the fill, choose the color here, and we'll just do this as like, let's do it as like a lightish red color like that. Doesn't have to be anything specific. And then I can go down to L2, choose that as like, let's do like a bit of a mint green color, would be kind of cool. And then I'm just going to go ahead and go through and kind of do the same sort of color scheme as I made earlier. So give me a little while and I'll go ahead and finish this up. Alright, so I went through and simply, chose all the colors that I thought would look pretty nice, kind of reflecting the same theme from the original here. If I were to give you any advice for picking your own colors, my only advice would be to make the colors fairly light in color and not overly saturated, because they're going to become a little bit more saturated throughout the rest of this tutorial here. Alrighty then. So next up, we need to create the bar that shows up around the edge of our shape here. So let's go create a new layer above our background, and let's go ahead and bring back our guides with Control semicolon, and let's swap to our rectangle tool. And we're simply going to create a rectangle roughly a little bit bigger than the center bar behind everything right now. Alright, so let's go ahead and select that center bar and do Control-Alt-T or Command-Option-T if you're on a Mac. And let's scale this down until it's the same width as the inner portion of these shapes that kind of get stretched out towards the sides here. And then we're going to stretch this upwards until it's just a little ways taller than the original squares and all that. So right around there should be pretty good. We'll hit the check mark to commit that transformation. Alright, so now we'll do the same thing that we did before. We'll make a copy of this off to the left hand side. This time we'll keep it flush with the original rectangle here. And we're going to bring up the transform tool by hitting Control or Command T. And we'll simply bring this in somewhere around here. And we'll do the same thing by clicking in this corner while holding the Control key, the Alt key, and the Shift key all at the same time here. And we're going to bring this in until these two dots here match up with the original white box that kind of goes off to the sides there. Alright, so if that looks pretty good, and I think mine does, we can hit the check mark, commit the transformation here, and then we'll do Control-Alt-T, and we'll move this on over to the other side and flip it around. Make sure that it's flush with the original rectangle in the middle, and once again hit the check mark here. And now all we really need to do is change the opacity down to 10%. And this will create a very subtle highlight behind all of our shapes. So now we have all of our basics down here. We're going to go ahead and create those diagonal shades of color that we saw earlier. So to do that, let's go up top and we'll do the shortcut Control-Alt-Shift-E. That's Command-Option-Shift-E if you're on a Mac. And what this will do is that it will take everything that it sees on the canvas right now and merge it all into a new layer. And so we're going to name this as, whatever, we'll just keep that as layer 1. It doesn't really matter. And what we're actually going to do here is desaturate this by hitting Control-Shift-U or Command-Shift-U if you're on a Mac. And we're going to change this to Soft Light. Now, right now all this really does is it kind of makes everything a little bit more bland. So what we're going to do is go to the left-hand side and choose our polygonal lasso tool. And let's go ahead and zoom out. And basically what we'll do is do that diagonal shape that we saw earlier. Alright, so just kind of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, as many times as you like. And then we're going to use this as a layer mask. So with layer 1 selected, go to the bottom of the layers panel and click the little square with a hole in it to create a layer mask. Looking pretty good, right? So now what we can do is go to our adjustments panel, and once we have that open up, we can choose the curves adjustment layer. And let's click this little box with a downwards pointing arrow to clip it to layer 1. Alright, so now what we want to do is bring in these dark shades quite dramatically here, and then very subtly bring back some of our highlights and midtones back over here. Alright, and so this is the overall effect that we're getting. I might make it a little bit more dramatic here, just kind of make it a little more intense. So that's looking a little bit better here. I might dumb down the opacity just a touch here. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Just kind of mess with that as you please there. And let's see here. Let's go ahead and apply some more color funness to our shape. So let's open up the left-hand group here. And let's choose layer 1, or sorry, left 1. And let's go to Effects and do a Gradient Overlay. And all we're going to do is set this to a blend mode of soft light at an opacity of 50%. And we'll click OK. And let's go ahead and copy this layer style to left-hand 2. So let's select layer 1, hold down the Alt key or the Option key for on a Mac, and click and drag the effects icon down to L2. And that will create a copy of that on L2. However, let's go to L2's Gradient Overlay and double-click that, and toggle the reverse. So that way these two layers are now having a gradient overlay applied in different directions. So now we're going to make copies from layer 1 to layer 3, and we'll make a copy from layer 3 to layer 5. And then we'll go back and do from layer 2 to layer 4. Alright? So it's kind of like an alternating thing. So 1, 3, and 5 have the same layer, and then 2 and 4 have the reversed ones. So let's do the same thing to the right hand side. Let's do layer 1 to R1, and let's do left 2 to right 2, and then we'll do the alternating thing, right 1 to right 3, right 3 to right 4. Whoops, I made a copy of the whole layer. There we go. So right 3 to right 5, and then from right 2 to right 4. Alright? That might be a little bit confusing, but it's a video, so you can go backwards and play through it a few times if you really need to. So anyway, let's go ahead and make a copy from left 1 to center 1 with our gradient overlay. But this time, let's go into the gradient overlay, and let's go ahead and toggle the reverse, and let's set the style to radial, and we'll also bump up the scale all the way up to 150%. So this will create a very subtle gradient going from the center out to the sides, where it makes it a little bit brighter in the middle and a little bit more shaded towards the sides here. So now we're going to go ahead and make a copy of that layer style from center 1 to center 2. Let's go in and untoggle the reverse. And then we'll do the same thing of copying from center 1 to 3, and then from 3 to 5, and then copying from center 2 to center 4. And this will create an alternating set of gradients going down the middle. So just one or two things should be left here, guys. One thing we'll do is create a nice little gradient around the edge here. And I'm going to make mine just with my Vignettes action pack. If you guys want to download this and use it for yourselves, feel free to visit the link in the description. It'll take you to a video that kind of shows off all these different vignettes and shows you how to use them. So I'm going to select the retro vignettes, click the play little button, and that will kind of saturate the edges a little bit for us with a cool hue. And let's actually go down to the background layer and create a new layer above it. And this will be our splash of color here. And we're going to set this to a blend mode of color with an opacity of 65%. And on this layer, let's swap to our brush tool and set the brush tool down to something like 20 or 30%, somewhere in that area. And make sure your brush is large and soft. Oh wow, that sounded really freaking dirty. But either way, so a large soft brush, and we will set our color to, I don't know, kind of like a purplish pink color here. And all we'll simply do is click and drag a couple of times in this lower left hand corner to create just a nice little shade of purple. Looking pretty nice. And so that is all there is to it, guys. So thank you guys for watching this tutorial. Please give this video a like if you were able to learn something new here. And as always, be sure to leave a comment so that you might show up in next week's favorite comments. So that's all I have for you guys today. Time to check out our favorite comments. See you later.
Take a look at me, straight cruising in the hog down the pavement streets, busting 50 miles, blaze through the rain and fog. You can't stop me, mother fluffer, cause I'm in a hog.
Take a picture trick, I'm in a hog, noob. Hauling 5 monkeys, cause the engine's lubed. Got my spare keys, and my bolts tightened. I'm doing wheelies while I'm burning, yo, Nissan Titan.
I'm riding on the turret, splitting domes and necks, the turret's blasting, keeping everybody in check. But this ain't training grounds, this is real as it gets. I'm in a hog, mother fluffer, don't you ever forget.
I'm in a hog and I'm going fast, and I got a supercharged turbo V8 engine. I'm the king of the hill in a hog like Neo. If you're sitting still, then you're showing not Neo. Get the fluff out, this hog is real.
Fluff planes, I'm in a truck, mother fluffer.